Hey folks, welcome back to D-Town Chats podcast with your fellow co-hosts Stephen Short and Jason Palasota. We are excited to be joined by a true leader in the world of people and culture, Leah Joy, a standout voice in human resources based in Dallas, Texas. With a Fortune 500 company career built on fostering inclusive workspaces, navigating complex organizational change, and championing employee well-being, Leah has become a highly regarded figure in shaping HR strategies that move companies forward. Today, she shares insights from the front lines of talent development, leadership alignment, and what it takes to build strong, people-first cultures in today's fast-moving business landscape. Let us dive in with the brilliant, insightful Leah Joy.
Thanks for having me.
Just waiting
Can
for
you
the
just follow me
color.
around with that introduction when I meet new people?
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
stand behind me and go, I don't know if you know this, but,
Yeah.
and then just read it.
Actually, you can just show them the podcast. Like,
Yeah, there you
hey,
go.
look, I'm famous.
I'm sending you a link.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of background, and keep it brief.
Keep it brief. Okay.
What an invite here.
I know. I've known Jason for a long time, so we get a little sibling
Yes.
chatter sometimes.
True.
I've been in HR for quite some time. I did not seek that out. It tends to find you sometimes. And after college, I graduated right when the economy was tanking. And so it was, take whatever job you could at that point. I have a degree in education from UNC Charlotte. Go 49ers. And never used it, but have used it every day. So I never used it for what it was intended for. But just the process of learning how people learn and retain and all of that has been really helpful in my field. But fast forward to pretty much all the jobs that I had prior to HR, it was like, hey, you're reliable. Hey, you know how to do these things. Or like, hey, you fully understand this system. We're going to give you these other things to do. Yeah. And then eventually I landed and they were like, you seem trustworthy and maybe confidential. We're going to let you do these things for us. And so the current company that I'm with, I started out in a division local office and was there for 4 years. And now I've been at corporate.
That's awesome. And I was able to meet a lot of her family and friends. And it's funny because I come to Leah for HR, questions or topics. Not lately, but sometimes I'll call her in a panic, hey, this is happening. What do I do? And it turns out that a lot of people came to you for that. And I don't even know if you being in HR had anything to do with it.
I don't know either.
She's just a people person.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just calm with opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's dive into a couple topics, and this is just really casual, so we can kind of dive in and out of these things and tell stories and things like that, but along the way. The first thing we want to talk about is engagement, and the Gallup recently reported that 30% of employees are just not engaged. And while that can mean a lot of things, that's just a general, sort of question or fact there. So for an employer, what are some ways that you've seen that can be effective to boost engagement? And so I run a small company. You're at a Fortune 5, a much larger company. Mm-hmm. So it may be a loaded question, but what are some things that worked for engagement, and maybe what are some things that didn't work for engagement that you guys rolled out as a company?
Sure. So I think that, we're all human and we're trying to motivate humans, and people love free stuff. They love food and they love being away from work. So if you can combine all three, sometimes you get people over the moon. Now, of course, you're going to have those
Charles
people
trying to engage them still.
Yes. So you're going to have those people that are just never happy with anything. Mm-hmm. But if it's like, hey, we've met this goal, so we're going to do this outing and then we're going to let you guys go for the day, you're going to have people lined up to, let's meet that goal. Yeah, let's do that thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just so simple. It's anything. You remember going on field trips as a kid in school? It's like anything outside of the mundane. It's like, oh, we go to school, we
people
do this,
hop on
we
the
do that.
bandwagon.
Yeah, they do. And it's just so nice. I mean, the company I work for now, we're about to move buildings, and it's like, we're going to have like a moving day.
That's
and,
cool.
we're going to get to go through all of the crap that's been in our office for 7 years and figure out what we want to keep. And like, hey, do you want this? Hey, do you want that? I've always had my eye on your lava lamp. So, just kind of those things, anything to break up the monotony and kind of celebrate being together and building a team, I think goes a long way.
How would you do that? So as an employer, and then he'll ask maybe an employee question. What if you're virtual? What are some things you could do that could boost engagement if you're not physically with people?
I mean, Tiff's Treats comes to mind. Send some crumble their way. I'm a big fan of still engaging in a local. If it's a completely remote position for a completely remote company, you're gonna have some things. You can play games with prizes, Jeopardy, things like that. Things you can do virtually. I know there's like a Wheel of Fortune situation that I have a gal friend that's completely remote. And they do stuff like that. And then they get a gift card to like the company store or Starbucks or Visa or whatever. You're going to have to think a little bit harder to engage your remote employees, but it can be done.
What are some things your company does and that you like and maybe don't like? And Leah maybe can.
Yeah, my firm is a little more segregated because we have offices all over the country, and we're a little more of a boutique firm, at least from comparison to like a Fortune 500. But I will say, cocktail hours, happy hours, retreats, even stuff that might just be like right after hours of work or something like that. It's something to kind of just remind yourself like, hey, these are people that you work with every day. And yes, sometimes they can be absolutely obnoxious or frustrating as hell. But at the same time, you do work with them and you want to build a relationship with them. And so having cocktail hours or having retreats or having holiday parties or something like that, I do find to be effective, at least for me as an employee. And I think that over time, when people have kind of enough tenure within the company, they start to get comfortable with that person, whether it is just on a professional basis or a personal one. And piggybacking off of that a little bit, like from your experience, I mean, obviously working at a Fortune 500 company, it's huge, massive. So there's not everyone knows everybody in different departments and divisions. Have you found that employees would be inclined to engage in those type of activities if they had more of like a cohesive environment, or is it really just a matter of like, are they getting benefit out of this for themselves?
Yeah, I think that we do our best to kind of do a couple events a year where it's like everybody's out, and but then you find that they kind of stay in their little pods of departments too. And so really kind of what's come from the top is we want you guys to invest in your individual teams and your individual departments, because that makes it a real manageable amount. We're not going to be able to take everybody in the entire company to a baseball game, but a department could go,
right?
That kind of thing. And so you've got to make it something where it's a tangible, because if you add too many people, it just gets really overwhelming. And it's like, well, I had this time to talk to Steve because we went just as a department to, whatever event, and I learned about his family, and that's in common with me. And let's say like you and I really didn't work together very well. I thought you were kind of a butthead and you thought I was, frigid, but then we were forced to sit, it just lined up that we had to sit together, and now we have all this stuff in common, and now I like you more, and I'm going to pop by and just say, hey, and so it's all about kind of building that culture where you have opportunities to do that. We really hate for it to be forced fun. It's really just, we're having an opportunity to do this. You guys can come out and do it if you want.
A lot of people have that initial impression about him, so that adds up. So, yeah. It actually stays, though, even after they get to know him. It actually gets
I just
bigger.
keep coming around, Eventually they end up loving me, and then I can't get rid of them.
Right.
I still can't get rid of them. I can't get rid of them.
From an employer standpoint, how do you break up the percentage of the following? Salary versus culture.
I have no idea. Pass.
In other words, I mean, someone could have a fantastic salary but not feel the culture fit or something, and maybe want to leave, or vice versa. They have a fantastic culture fit, but the salary's not quite there, and they still may want to leave. I mean, is that?
I think it's what's important to that individual.
Okay.
I think more seasoned employees might focus more on, I'm here to do a job.
Okay.
I'm here to go home.
Yes.
I think the newer generation that's coming into the workforce wants everything. This is part of their life. This is where they're spending their most time. They want to find purpose in what they're doing. And so, you could end up staying somewhere that you just love the culture more so than, the money will come at some point, or, your goals will come at some point.
Right.
And so it just depends on an individual basis, what is important to that person.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, I have a question, kind of piggybacking off your topic a little bit about like corporate toxicity, because I mean, it's really easy, I think, for people to see a little money waved in their faces, especially if they're not seasoned employees, to kind of think, okay, this is a good opportunity to make me a little more money. Yeah, I might have to work a few more hours, but I mean, let's say I'm single and I don't really have any other roots or anything I have to worry about. But employers are obviously concerned about making sure they have at least, or they should be at least to a certain degree, that they have a harmonious environment. Have you found that when you talk to executives or people in upper management, and do they seem to be curious or concerned about that environment, or are employees open enough to share with you or with management about how they feel about how the company is thriving?
So by toxic work environment, do you mean like there's a lack of like work-life balance and people are getting burnt out?
Or it could be you feel like you're not
too demanding,
or maybe your voice isn't heard. I mean, I can speak for myself in the saying, and I'm not going to mention my employer here, but we have issues with technology a lot of times, and we've verbalized this on multiple occasions. It's partly because we're owned by a commercial bank that's kind of independent. They're a parent company of ours, but we operate under their policies and their cybersecurity protocols. And there's been a lot of frustration around the cybersecurity protocols with tech and stuff like that. And I wouldn't say it's created a toxic environment for me, but I will say that I have worked in toxic environments in the past, and it's usually because employees don't feel like their voice is being heard in terms of frustrations. And whether it relates to just general and corporate environment, or it relates to specific resources that they needed to actually do their job.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's a very powerful response from management to, we want to have an open door policy. We want to hear back from the individuals that are doing the day-to-day job.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that even if it's something like if it's a third-party measure that you're using, it's so important to go, I understand how that's frustrating. Yeah. And maybe the answer is, I need you to do everything that you can. And then as long as you know that you have done that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes employees feel alone in their struggle with whatever the process is or whatever the system that they use. You can only do X, Y, and Z, and you really need to be able to do these things.
Yeah.
I think it's important for the employee to give that feedback.
Yeah.
And if you have a good relationship with your manager, as a manager, you want to receive that feedback to hear from your team and hear how things are going. And if you've got a manager that doesn't want to hear any of that, I think you've got a problem with a manager.
And typically companies should build that into their processes, right?
They should. Yeah. We have a whole open door policy where it's like, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but if the wheel isn't working best on the equipment we have, speak up, raise a hand, because you're doing the day-to-day job, and so you might be instrumental in helping us figure out the resolution for all of this.
Right.
And so you found that the upper management, they're saying that they want to be informed of what's going on in terms of issues. Do you find that they are receptive to it and actually commend action for it?
That's the hope.
Yeah.
So I think it's really powerful too to have. Anytime I go and talk to my boss, I try to say, hey, here's an issue and here's what I think we should do. And that a manager really, especially if you're, in your career and maybe, every day's a job interview, but an employee that goes to their boss and says, here's the problem, I found it, here's what I think we should do, that kind of starts a more solution oriented instead of, hey, here's the problem, let me know what I should do, I'm going back over here and handling all of that. That's your employee, that's a 9-to-5er. They're not going to be here
too long.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Or they might be, but it's like.
So I want you to restate that. So the employee that's actually taking initiative, I think, is what you're saying, versus the employee that's just taking instruction. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And you get all kinds for sure. You get people, even for, we're set up where it's individual offices across the country. And I used to be in one of those. And then now they're kind of under the umbrella of corporate HR. And so we've got even people in the field that are doing the HR role where it's like, hey, it's very clear that this is a 9-to-5 for them. And we need more out of them. And so when you have someone who is more proactive in all of that, they're shining. And you want the best for them. You want to kind of use them more as a resource, and they stand out.
So those individuals, can they be taught these things, or is it something that they have organically, maybe part of their upbringing and their influences in life? If someone just doesn't have that characteristic, A, can it be taught? B, should it be taught? Or do you place those individuals in certain roles in the company because they thrive in a certain role and maybe they're not? In other words, you can't have A stars on your whole team, right? You're going to have a bell curve.
You could try.
You can try. I don't know if it's ever happened.
One would hope.
You can try it, definitely. So I guess my question is, have you seen the development of someone who maybe didn't have those leadership skills at first, and then they were a part of some program that you guys had that you saw them grow from A to B to C to D? Have you seen that?
I feel like that might have been me, but
oh, there you go. So you're the example.
I think part of it is when you're not experiencing that, if you're the manager or the person in the role where, okay, I'm receiving the information, a powerful question is, well, what do you think we should do?
Right.
If you're not getting the answer from them.
What if you're getting a substandard answer?
Then, okay, that's a start. Here's what I also think on top of that, or what do you think about this?
So open the dialogue with them and see if it creates a spark that could create a flame possibly.
Yeah. And you may need to add more people to the conversation. Let's get the whole team in here. Let's have a brainstorming whiteboard session of, because if you're experiencing this, someone else is probably experiencing this. And
so in your experience, how many times should someone kind of go through that? And we're talking about maybe an employee that's either complacent or an employee that's just not meeting standards, whatever those might be, whether it's KPIs, metrics, sales, goals, whatever it is. How many, I guess, chances do you give your employees? I'm just going to try to simplify.
I just think it depends. You know, sometimes you experience things with employees that's like, you've been here 10 years, you should know this. Why don't you know this?
Right.
And, you know, maybe you need to do training periodically for certain things. And then certain people, you got to go, okay, well, maybe it's been a while since we've even broached this subject for this part of your job. So that makes sense of why we need to review all of these things.
Got it.
Yeah, but there is no... Everyone always wants this like recipe for success from HR, and we're like, I don't know. I'm right along with. I'm here to partner with you.
Right.
You know what would you like to do as the manager with this person who you continue over and over? You know.
Right. Meeting the employers' goals together, objectives. It's hard. I think it's very difficult, and you're in a unique role because you're part of the management team and you're an employee at the same time. So you have these kind of possibly conflicting. You see this aerial overview of what's going on with the company and what you're seeing, what other employees are doing. So ideally you should have all the insight and you should be the guru here, right? But
or am I just saving it all for a rainy day? It's in all of my pockets, and one day I'm just gonna.
I mean, you know,
here's all the answers.
You gotta save yourself sometimes.
You're writing a book, right? That's right.
Maybe.
We're gonna
maybe one day
advertise your book, and in the next year when you're famous, you may not even come to this podcast at that point.
Who knows? Who knows? So, based on your experience, what has been the number one complaint or frustration amongst employees?
Well, Stephen, I'm glad you asked that. I think a lot of people end up on my phone line because they feel misunderstood, not heard. They're frustrated with the way things are. They don't feel like they can go to their local HR representative for various reasons. They don't feel like they can talk to their manager about any of these things. And a lot of times that's one of the first things that I ask.
Yeah.
You know,
and you're the escalation.
I am the escalation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So they kind of tried possibly or just kind of skipped that. Okay.
Well, and people are skip happy, so they're like, I'll call corporate HR.
Okay.
Sometimes they advertise that, but you know, it just kind of depends. But a lot of that is, you know, in some of our management training, we really say you want to make sure that you're approachable as a manager, because once you take that away, they don't feel like they have anywhere to go, employees, and then they land on my door, and we're kind of working backwards sometimes of, well, let's unpack, you know, why don't you feel like you have anybody to talk to, or, you know, and we talk too about how, you know, you're setting the culture every day as the manager. It really starts with the manager. So the CEOs and everybody can say, here's what we believe as a company. But if you in the day-to-day management role aren't enforcing that and kind of buying into that, then your team isn't going to see that either. And they'll go, you guys are full of crap and we don't see that. And you need to do something about this guy over here. And so we really need managers to think through. There's this line in an Ava Brothers song, and it says, decide who you want to be and go be it. So managers need to figure out who they are as a manager, their philosophy. What do you want to be communicating to your team? Do you want your team to be scared of you, and that's why they do their job, because they're just so nervous and they're going to stay until 5 o'clock exactly because they don't want to even approach you and ask if they can leave early? Or, you know, and so what's your thing? My whole thing when I had a team was I want to build up instead of tear down. And so that was with anything. You know, you're out of dress code. You look cute as a button today. I love your fashion. I love your style sense. You just can't wear it at the office.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I need you to go home and, finish out the day or whatever. And it's like, you can almost say everything. And again, because that's an opportunity to build that relationship.
Right.
I could have said, hey, you're out of dress code. You need to go.
Yeah.
And the reception of that is so much different than, oh, she really likes my outfit. I just can't wear this at work. I feel great. I'm just going to go,
Right.
So, I mean, that's the
100%.
hope.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then how these managers are managing is really going to determine their leadership style. And it's so important to think about these things because that's what they're doing on a day-to-day, whether they know it or not. So to give it a thought if you're a manager, and then your leadership style reflects that. And then that's all working together to create culture. And so if something's amiss, if I'm used to, or if I'm working with a new manager, they're like, I don't know, that my team, there's a lot of turnover, that kind of thing. And it's like, okay, well, I'm new to working with you. What's your management philosophy? And they're like, oh, well, I just really believe in servant leadership and I'm just going to try to do everything I possibly can for my company. Okay, well, you telling them that they need to meet you at the office now, no ifs, ands, or buts, via text, and that kind of comes across a little harsh, and so it's not lining up. That's your leadership style. That's your leadership style, and it's not meeting up with your management philosophy, and that's creating the culture that doesing align with the company.
Right, and we talked a little bit about the culture, and I know we're kind of jumping topics, but hopefully it comes together.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Culture, you're at a large company, and so it's developed over years and years and years. Whereas if it's a smaller company or mid-sized like his, and maybe small like mine, it comes down from the leadership probably. I don't know how yours is really, but like what is culture? I mean, I don't want to get that elementary, but it's developed I think over time. But it starts probably at the leadership level, and it's not just what you put on words; it's how they act. And I guess
it's how it's implemented.
Is there anything you'd want to say on that? Have you seen that? A huge discrepancy for like what a manager is saying or what the company policy is and what the person does?
Well, I think some things you can tell that managers have left it to their own interpretation. And that's when we kind of come in and go, well, no, that's not who we are. Okay. Here's who we want to be. Yeah. And really gone are the days where it was, you had the Mad Men era or it was the good old boys and you could just yell at whoever and you could fire whoever for giving you side eye. And you can't really do that now. There's a whole process. And so it's our job too to basically speak into whatever situation that we're noticing and basically affirm, here's who we want to be, here's who we need to be, because as managers you're representing the company. Yeah. And you can be personally sued as a manager for decisions you've made and things that you've said to people.
Well, that opens another topic, I guess.
Yes,
okay, I don't know. That's another issue.
No, I mean,
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I like what she was touching about earlier. I mean, leading by example, setting that top-down approach type thing. 'Cause, I mean, I understand that a lot of people have different philosophies, and coming from my background in the kind of the management consulting, accounting, investment banking lifestyle, everything's kind of siloed into kind of specialties to a certain degree. And so it's easy to kind of, for managers to indemnify themselves or avoid liability or responsibility in some cases because they'll say, well, that's not my department. We worked on one project together type thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, like what I've found is most effective is kind of what you're talking to, deciding up front what your management philosophy is. Whenever I come into a new project with, a managing director, I might not be as candid as asking, what's your management philosophy? But I might ask them something along the lines of, it's like, okay, what is your style? Like, do you want me to check in with you every 2 days and let you know exactly what's going on in this project? Do you want me to just send you updates based on milestones? Do you expect me to pick up my phone at 6 a.m, whenever you have a question about something? And it enforces you to be able, responsible for what you're involved in on the project, but it also impresses upon them that says, I want to defer to your leadership in this, but you have to establish that. Yeah. And I'm just saying this kind of to lead up to the question is do you find that most managers, at least in your company, are willing to do that? Or is it more they just really want to stick with what they understand and know and remove themselves from that context?
I think, again, it would kind of depend. I think people in general, so we talk to managers who are like, well, I mean, they just know that I like this and I need follow-up and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, how do they know that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I make eye contact with them in the morning, and so I think that they know I like follow up, and it's like, no, you're gonna actually have to verbalize these things.
Yeah.
You're gonna need to say, hey, here's what I need from you, and how kind that is as someone who's managing an employee, and how great and proactive it is on your part as an employee of, I need to make sure, I want this to be a good relationship. I want this to be efficient.
Yeah.
So give me the feedback of what you need from me. Okay, great. I can go do that now because I'm clear on what we need. So we have managers that just don't want to say anything ever. It's just like, just read my mind and feel my vibe. And as you're managing people, that's not really effective because that's not how we work.
Yeah.
And then partnering with an HR representative, that's not effective either, because if something comes up, let's say you're late a bunch, and
it's hard to make an argument for it.
Well, let's say you're late a bunch, and it's like, okay, well, have you said anything to him? Well, I mean, again, I looked him dead in the face as he was walking in, and then
I was trying to speak telepathically to him so he would know.
And then I sighed really big when I passed his desk. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't stand up in a court of law if we get to that point. And so we are going to have to start having these conversations, because again, you're either building or you're tearing down.
Yeah.
So instead of being mad at Steve for getting here late, and you're just keeping a log of everything that we're doing wrong with
only
Steve.
2 minutes.
Yes. The whole thing of us sometimes, and it's like, you just kind of feel like you're teaching people how to be people and communicate. And so it's just these simple things of, well, go ask him if he's okay, or go ask him, was there traffic today or whatever? Hey, let's talk about, do we need to change our, it can lead to all kinds of things. You just never know. But we can't make assumptions. And we got to make sure we're actually using words and communicating.
I mean, I've always found that communication has been fundamental in situations.
It is.
It seems to be kind of the cog in the wheel in terms of miscommunication for most companies, and why the things don't work out. And I mean, I've always found it kind of ironic, because I mean, I feel like in the olden days, like you were talking about the Mad Men, like people kind of just spoke their mind type thing. Yeah, it wasn't ideal, because you can't just very well just fire or scream at someone because you're unhappy. But by virtue of just expressing your thoughts in the process, there was a little less misunderstanding between the person where you stand and where that person stands.
Yeah.
I'm going to take his place here asking about an employer question, but like, do employers try to express communication being the paramount kind of process behind how they can feel comfortable? I mean, you were talking earlier about how a lot of employees feel like they can't come to the management and say like, hey, look, I'm frustrated about this. Or I don't feel like I'm heard in this capacity. Are management sending the message back out to them saying like, we want you to feel connected here. We want you to feel like you can come talk to us about this stuff? Because I mean, I hear this a lot. Like I see companies where they'll send out like a mass email once every year or something like that. We're a family environment. We want you to feel like you can come talk to us about anything. Wink, wink. But at the end of the day, it's the actions don't match the words in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I think it goes back to that individual's management philosophy. We can have a policy all day, and we do, of here's the expectation that we have for you as a manager and your approachability. And it's really on, it's that manager's priority, and needs to be on them, on their day-to-day relationship with their team of, we want to be approachable. We want to have an open door. Because again, we talk all the time of, a business relationship is just another form of relationship. I have a relationship and friendship with you. I'm just getting to know you, Steve Short. And, a business relationship is just another relationship. We have all kinds of relationships. And so what is the hardest thing in any relationship? Communication. Yeah. People are misunderstood. People miscommunicate.
Maybe it's not communication, though. I want to take that a step further.
Okay.
It's effective communication.
Yes.
And tailored to each person, So I have to know who you are as an individual, So this goes to something you had recommended a couple of years ago for my company was to promote these personality tests for our hires or prospective hires. And while we did that, it really did help. And even if it's not exact, there's at least it promotes some sort of roadmap or pathway to hire by. So it's the same kind of thing as well, because when you take these personality tests, they're kind of telling you this is how this person take stress. This is how the person communicates with this or that scenario, things like that. I do this. We do the same to each other as friends and as colleagues and things like that. Maybe it's not written out that way, but so effective communication is tailoring the way, I think, for that person to understand it. Because I could communicate to you all day, but if it's in another language, you're not going to understand it.
Right.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes knowing those differences too on how you need to deliver direction is really important too.
Yes.
Some people need it, hey, you're doing such a great job. You're such a I mean, everyone loves to hear that. And then some people are like, oh my gosh, you call me into your office. Like, I already know something's going on. You got to tell me something. And they're not going to hear anything that you say anyway. And so you can kind of know, like, I'm just going to start with what we're here to talk about today. And then we're going to talk about how you feel about it and your thoughts. And
you don't have an HR department. You're basically your own HR department.
She's my HR department in a sense. She's my consultant every so often.
He just calls me from the bathroom.
So you bring him in yourself, and you're like, I think you know where.
No, I have to I have to play good cop and bad cop, and that's very difficult.
Do you do all your terminations? I don't know how many terms you're doing.
Yeah, at least once a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I know managers that have had a hard time with the delivery because they do have those relationships, and it's kind of like, a lot of these outside of a layoff situation, these individuals are pretty much terming themselves based on their action or their lack of action, and you're really just delivering the message. Right. Is how I would.
Well, silent quitting is huge, right? And I think there's some new kind of ideas that are out there. Floating around in the industry or in the world, I guess. But silent quitting was a pretty recent thing. How do you guys handle? What is your opinion of silent quitting? And if the person's just basically not showing up or doing anything, and you haven't, maybe you didn't catch it. Maybe the manager didn't catch it. And it's been going on for a number of months. What would you say?
Well, typically I would think that there would be a lack of job performance. So we would need to basically address that.
So you address it then and then put them through either...
Hold them accountable.
What is it? A
performance improvement plan.
Improvement PIP or the one you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and employee counseling.
Yeah, counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So you would do that?
I would do that. Again, we got to communicate.
Yeah.
Hey, we hired you to do this job. You're not doing all of the job. You've got to address you're doing the job.
Do you reset the 30, 60, 90? Every case is different, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And your policy may not even say exactly. You probably have a lot of flexibility there, I imagine.
We do. We don't follow a progressive disciplinary model. But I think at the end of the day, we have to be able to show what we're looking for as HR partners with the field is, did we say what we needed to say as representative of the company to this individual? Mm-hmm. Did we say, hey, you're not doing this, we've hired you to do this job. We're needing X, Y, and Z done. That's not happening. We need this to improve. And if this doesn't improve, then these things will happen. Yeah, and as long as we have communicated that on most situations, if you're stealing, we're probably just going to terminate you. We're not going to write you up, that kind of a thing. Yeah. As long as we can show that that's what we did, we feel pretty comfortable in making a change if we need to. But the goal is always that people improve, or, for quitting, it might be a conversation of, I've got this going on in my personal life and I just really can't focus. There might be more to the story. And so that's where we're really dependent on the managers to build those relationships, to notice those things in an ideal situation, and see where we go from there.
Cool.
So we were kind of touching a little bit on benefits earlier. So you mentioned a little bit about how benefits can be a little more attractive probably to, say, someone a little more seasoned, a little bit older individuals, people that, money kind of seems to be a little bit more of a thriving factor for younger individuals. But, you obviously come across a lot of interviews with new employees or new hires and stuff like that. Do they ask typically about benefits? And if they do, is it like a big concern of theirs?
It depends. Yeah. It depends on what someone is looking. Some people just want to be wherever the job is offered. They're trying to move to that state. They're trying to get in with the company. They've heard great things, whatever it is. And so, but the way that we have set it up is it does get better the longer, you're always trying to incentivize. When you get to this part, then you get more vacation time, or when you get to 5 to 10 years, because longevity is really what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, so that kind of goes hand in hand with culture to work to having these lasting employees that we've invested in. We're not going to keep all of them. But I mean, I've been where I am for 11 years and they're going to have to, drag me out kicking and screaming. I will never leave. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's like the ideal situation.
Well, piggybacking off that, so let's say for all of our viewers out here, whether they're employers or employees, and they're trying to find what's a good balance for them. I always like to compare offers whenever I'm looking around for a job to kind of see, all right, like this one's offering a little more salary, but this one's offering better benefits, something like that. Like in your mind, what is a competitive package? Like what does that typically include?
So I am not the best person to ask this because
Yeah.
I am very much like, my attitude is thank you so much for letting me work here.
Yeah.
Not, I got so many offers. I'm just trying to decide what I'm going to do. That has never been me. I think when I date one person at a time. I don't date multiple people because that's a lot of work. But also
You don't
I
have
can't.
an app where it just says
I have an app.
401k,
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yeah. I'm like, take this personality test and please let me know. But yeah, I think again, it's going to depend on what is important to that person because you can't say everyone values everything the same.
No.
And so I think if you have enough things as a company that you can kind of, oh, and by the way, we do this. Oh, and by the way, at this point, it's not in your offer letter, but at this point, here's what the company does to incentivize that longevity makes things a little bit more attractive.
Sure.
I'm not into job hopping. I know some people do, or they feel like they need to leave for certain reasons, salary or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of times too, you want to have that good relationship when someone is leaving because they might go and get more experience and then want to come right back and you're actually benefiting from their time doing X, Y, and Z out there in the world. Yeah. So, again, every day is an opportunity. Every day is a job interview, basically. So, just keeping all of that in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Steve-O, what's your experience with HR?
Terrible. No, I'm kidding.
You guys are supposed to be quiet.
My philosophy has you're gonna love this. My philosophy has it's shifted a lot. I mean, look, yes, I've had blows with HR in terms of I've been laid off. It's not no one likes getting laid off, and it's part of the job. It wasn't because of performance. It's character building. It was budget cuts, of course.
Yeah.
But I also think that. And I'll just say this with the caveat that I don't think this is an issue in every single company. But I do think that in a lot of cases, human resources has been used as a tool to kind of devoid management of responsibility in how to manage the company to a certain degree. And
a shield.
As a shield, yeah. And that's not what it was designed for. And that's, as you articulated well in the beginning of this episode. But what I found is that it's easy for management to basically say look, we've got some disgruntled employees here that are saying that, they're having these problems here and we don't have the money to fix it. So you need to come up with a solution that basically says we're going to quiet them or we're going to exit them.
Conspiracy theorists.
And it may sound like that, but I talk to people, besides her from HR, and I have friends that have had experiences and stuff like that. And I'm always receptive to the idea that, there's always two sides to a story. But at the same time, it's important to establish continuity between upper management and lower management. I mean, the people, it's kind of the way I look at it the same way I look at it as like a family unit. The kids look at the parents for guidance and decisions, and they want to be led. And Steve Jobs is famously known for I don't hire people for me to tell what them to do. I hire them for them to tell me what to do. And that sounds quippy in theory, but the message you're sending is that we hire people, we put you on a stable salary as advisors. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm advising you on how to handle your business, then why am I getting paid significantly less or compensated significantly less for what I'm doing?
So I call HR and explain that.
Well, yeah. I was like, HR, I'm telling management what to do, and I don't get paid as much. No, but I did find that philosophy kind of a little bit strange to me because as leaders in the industries, your job is to lead and to show people okay, here are the ways to advance in business. And if you're someone with less experience, maybe you could be the smartest person in the world. Doesn't necessarily mean you have the best advice on how to handle this industry. If you're a leader in your industry, you're a leader in your industry. And so I always found it kind of ironic that they would make the case that it would be preferable to hire people outside that don't have that experience to tell them what to do. So I'll have to say, like, I think that management will utilize HR sometimes as a way to kind of, like you said, deflect from responsibility to a certain degree. In some cases, it's necessary because it segregates. It helps mediate the situation. If the employer looks at this as he's a little bit disgruntled by the fact the employee seems to be negligent or not really appreciate what they've been provided, then that middle person can serve as a way to capacity. I mean, they do this. They do this with attorneys too. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who said that she's an attorney, and then they have the opposing side has an attorney, and then they have a mediator in between to help the two attorneys. And it's kind of ironic because you're thinking the attorneys are here to be objective to their parties to have those conversations, but the mediator is designed to help basically mediate the two independent parties advocating for their individuals. And so I think that's kind of what HR is to a certain degree.
We stay neutral as much as we can and try to look into exactly what's going on and where we need to be.
You're friends with the management in a sense, and you're on the side of the management and you're on the side of the.
Well, we are on the side
employees.
of resolution. So where does that land us? Somebody may not be happy.
No one usually is.
Yeah.
There's always a loser in any sort of negotiation in a sense, if you look at it that way. I think to add to your point, I think HR's job is to interpret what the management's trying to do, and then they're also to the employees, and then from the employees they're telling the managers or leaders, this is what the employees want, or this is the culture these are the things that they're working towards. So maybe consider making some adjustments.
Sure.
For retention.
And I've had situations where it's like you need to shape up and you need to shape up, and you both need to be professional.
So
we're not talking about this.
You were
again.
managing up.
Yeah.
Nice. See.
Yeah.
Ideal.
Yeah.
Like I said.
I get a little cranky sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Like, why are we having this conversation?
Well, she deals with a lot of disgruntled employees. I can understand.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's not even. It's just people.
Yeah.
People need people.
Yeah. Definitely.
Isn't that a Barbra Streisand song?
Probably. You want to try to sing it?
People. Is it need people? People who. You're the
Hurt
music
people
guy.
need.
I am the music guy, but
not Streisand.
Not Streisand.
Oh, shoot.
No, I wish. I'll get on that.
The better question is, why don't you have an HR department?
Good question. You're looking at it right over there, actually. No.
She's like, I'm not offering my services.
I literally told him the other day, I was like, I'm never working for you.
I almost said the same thing.
Yeah.
So he's like, he should be my CFO. I was like,
yeah.
Pass.
We can't bring friends into business.
You can't. It would totally change everything.
It's too hard.
I'd be like,
It's hard to do
I
it.
hate you. And then I'd get fired for being disrespectful, probably.
No,
I
I'd have to
would.
keep you on. I'd have to
Fire
keep
you
on.
and then,
I already
like,
have so many
after work.
comments about your podcast listening face. You make all these faces. When Steve talks,
Jesus.
you do this weird lip thing.
Cut this. This is bullshit.
You're just
He
like,
gets nervous every time I talk. He's like, he's gonna say something.
well,
that I
and then
really
his body
disagree.
language is kind of like, this is taking too long.
God damn it. Walk on
Was I
eggshells.
was I talking too much?
I don't know. That's my
You do
interpretation
talk.
of the
You
body
do talk a
language.
lot, actually.
So you are
Well,
on a
that's why we're
podcast.
here, aren't
Yeah.
we? That's what the podcast is
Chatty
about.
chats. D-Town chatty chats.
It's Steve Town Chats.
Steve Town Chats. That's what we're gonna change it to. Steve-O Chats. And
Steve-O
Jason's like my
Chats.
sidekick.
You guys do need some merch.
I'd make a
though.
terrible sidekick. What?
You need some merch.
Well,
Remember,
you
people
know-
love free stuff. So
We definitely want to do
help with the
merch.
merch.
I know. Well, so you guys could have some.
Well, actually, we're considering rebranding soon, so
You're not gonna be D-Town Chat.
I don't know.
we're not sure yet. I mean, I proposed the idea because of a lot of the questions we've been getting from people about it.
Yeah, one person.
No, I mean, I had multiple comments from people
Sure.
about it, but
I like it now.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
Yeah.
growing on me.
Forever.
It's
We'll
Get
growing.
some
see.
T-shirts.
it's just,
Yeah.
I love D-Town Chats.
Yes, because then if people, as long as you're being talked about,
Yeah.
you know. That's
Yeah,
all you need.
exactly.
It's
all you
like a
need.
black T-shirt with like D-Town Chats along the side of it on the back. You know, that's I could totally design them and sell them for us.
Do it. KPI.
So I do
That's
have
your
a
metric.
termination story. It's a company I no longer work for, so I'm free to share.
Perfect.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Let's do this.
So at one point in my career, I did human resources for a collection agency.
Right.
Ooh, yeesh.
It was quite lively. And so we termed this gal who went back to her cubicle Nothing was really organized there, as you would imagine. She goes back to her cubicle. We give her a box. She starts packing up everything. She's ripping the phone off the wall and putting it in, like, just actively, like, trying to rip. And I'm looking around going, I'm not really sure. What do I do here? Like, and where is everyone? Because
this
everyone
is a
just
landline that she's ripping
yes.
off?
And so everyone's just, once the information's given, managers peace out and they're done. And so I'm like, I think I said, I'm gonna need you to not. And so I have more experience.
It was you and her left in the building?
Yes.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it was
That's
wild.
bad.
I just let her
She's
take
like,
it.
I'm gonna wrap her neck around this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
awful.
It was like computer monitors, like all the things. I'm like, have fun trying to sell that landline. I don't
I don't know if I should tell my story, but
you should tell your story.
nah.
No?
No.
Oh man, that would have been hilarious.
That could be the lead in though. I don't know if I should tell my story, and then they'll cut it and that's like clickbait right there.
It is.
There you
Have
go.
you seen the movie Up in the Air?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
With,
Is it George Clooney where he just
Clooney?
travels around and fires
people?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find it entertaining?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. I mean honestly,
pretty
like
accurate.
it's terrible, but you get a little used to it
Yeah.
of delivering
Yeah.
heart. I'm sure doctors and surgery and delivering
Yeah.
information. I
Yeah,
mean it's
vendors.
not great, but
Yeah.
someone has to do this, and
Yeah.
so here we are. And
Do you find?
Yeah,
I mean,
it
have
just
you
is
gotten
what
to
it
a
is.
point where you can look at it objectively without feeling emotionally connected to those people? If say you are involved in the
most people I term, I sometimes
You've
I've never
never
even
even
met
met
them.
them, right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times it's just I'm representing the company, and
So you're
here
just
I
telling
have
people a
to
story.
communicate this to you, and
Do you do it in person or virtually? A lot of time?
both. Typically out in the field is in the divisions. We have managers are typically giving the information.
Oh.
Sometimes that's not available, and so
So sometimes you'll travel out there to do it.
I have done that depending upon the
The level of the employee. I see.
level of the
Got
employee.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Do you usually have someone in the room with you when you deliver this news?
yes,
Okay.
you always want a witness. Everyone always
Can
have
I
a
get
witness.
usually
have a
usually the
witness.
company's attorney, or maybe
or
the
just anybody.
the
Yeah.
CFO. I mean, that was
Yeah.
the way it was for me when they laid me off. They walked me in the room
Because
and
you're a
they
big
Did
guy.
you
I'm
report to the
surprised-
CFO?
Well, he's a big guy. I mean,
No,
Oh.
I was like 4 or 5 levels below. But,
Okay.
it was kind of interesting how they did it because like my boss's boss came up to my office and said like, "Hey, can you come upstairs real quick?" And like I knew they were doing layoffs and everything, but I actually was not under the impression that I was going to be one of them just because they were grooming me for a promotion. And then they sat me down and HR had this like kind of like dog look on their face. They're
Like puppy?
like almost.
Puppy eyes?
And then the CFO is
Wasn't
sitting,
that your
the
ex-girlfriend?
well, she was until then.
Yikes.
And then the CFO was sitting right next to her, and he just looked down most of the time.
Oh
texting.
no, you can't look down.
And
You
then he
gotta look people in the eye.
looked at me for a little bit, like he's like this extremely like consoling face type thing. And then they slipped like this manila folder next to me, and they're like, HR will escort you out in 20 minutes.
Wow. So going through that, if you're a manager,
Yeah.
how would you change the presentation of that? Because you know how that feels to have
Yeah.
it go that way.
Well, and here's the thing, like, I understand why they did it that way. I go back and forth on whether that would be the way I would approach it. I mean, the thing is that like you have people that kind of go off the handle, stealing phones or throwing tables or chairs or just reacting in a very visceral way that can one create liability for the company and two make things very erratic if they're not too far from other employees that are in the department type thing. But I also believe in the philosophy that if you're going to send out the message to these people that you work below you, that we're a family. Yes, people have to get fired or let go sometimes. I think it needs to be padded with a modicum of decency. And
Absolutely.
so like when I was perfectly fine. Like it was a huge shock to me that I was getting let go. I didn't even get a chance to download my own personal files from my laptop. They basically just said, grab your things and then we'll escort you out the building. And then your last paycheck will be in the mail. By the way, here's your severance agreement. Please mail this to us. So, I mean, like, that's no one's going to say like, man, that was a great experience. But like at the same time, you want to kind of try to find a balance between making sure that you're not too liable for situations, and also send the message out that like, look, this was difficult. Like, this was a difficult decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be different, if the person's lazy and they're not giving any attempt to actually try to do their job at all. Mm-hmm. But you also want to. I always live with the philosophy, you want to leave people better off than they were. So if maybe them getting fired was the impetus they needed to go into the next job and actually care and put in their full effort, they're going to probably be more likely to do that if they don't feel like corporations are the bad guy. And if they walk out with a sour taste in their mouth afterwards, it's just going to be a little bit harder to do it.
Do people who get fired, do they get severances in your experience?
It depends on the situation.
Only laid off, right?
Well, so typically you're only getting severance if you're doing like a separation agreement or something. Yeah. There's an agreement that's going on there.
And that's during their hire even? I mean, during their hire, that's what it is? Or do you do that after the fact? Oh, after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, typically it's, we're doing a termination for these reasons, and there might be a separation agreement for you to consider because you don't have to sign any of that if you don't.
Yeah.
Typically, if you're going to sue, you're not signing any of that.
We're going to give you something to shut up, basically.
My HR person right now would say, no, that's not really, but you could,
sign this
NDA. Could look at it that way.
The corporate double speak, if I could interpret, is that, we're going to sign this here, and then that indemnifies us from having to pay you or owe you anything else in advance.
Or you can't take us, you can't sue us.
But you're wanting those to be robust enough to be motivation for them for an employee to sign.
And how do you separate, if you're a family organization, how do you give them a hug? Say, I'm sorry. You have to go.
No, you can do as much as you can to still.
A parent's gonna tell their kid.
This isn't Daddy Dean here to tell you it's okay to be fired. No.
I don't know what's happening right now.
Daddy D. I don't know. We have to get into his head sometimes.
Yeah.
HR doesn't know what's going on in your head right now.
No.
That's the idea. I'm an enigma.
Keeps everybody guessing, including himself.
But no, I think you can be as helpful. Sometimes the timing of everything, you've tried to think through when would this be best to communicate, and we're still paying up until this certain point, and then at that point, so I think you can still be very considerate, even though you have to do those things. Jason's yawning, so it looks like he needs to wrap up.
Cut that. He yawned too. Contagious. All right, guys, you want to wrap it up? How do we feel? We feel good?
I think we have some good content.
I think we put a good bow on it. And, give it another 3.
We need to look into the camera and announce that it's ending, right? Like we always do.
You can go ahead. Do the exit. Look at your camera.
Well, thanks so much, Leah, for that wonderful, informative conversation. We hope that you'll come back on and tell us more about whether it's HR or whatever you want to feel like sharing in your life.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for our listeners out there and viewers. This is the 3rd episode that we're wrapping up here of D-Town Chats. More content to come soon. We've got plenty of the people on the list. And if you're just listening out there and you want to be interviewed, please let us know. We have a survey. Just reach out to either our Instagram account, or you can reach us at dtownchats@gmail.com. You can email us there, and we'll send you the survey, and we'll get you involved. So thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.